Welcome to the Sitting Comfortably podcast. This is Laurel Lindstrom speaking. I'm reading from my first novel, The Draftsman, due for publication by Unbound next January. This is the 12th Sitting Comfortably podcast, and I'm going to finish reading chapter 4. I hope you enjoy it. Oh, I should remind myself and say, chapter 4 is called... what is chapter 4 called? Oh, goodness. Bigwell, Edwards and Staines. It's all about how Martin got his job, the job he does, why he does it, how he does it, and so on. And we've just learned how weird Martin is, really. So, without further ado, are you sitting comfortably? Then I'll begin. By all these things was Martin's life measured, organised and monotonous. He could be quiet and untroubled in a steady whelm of details, drawings, in black ink on white paper, counting mouse drags and clicks, finding and defining binary spaces. Slowly the clamouring facts bouncing around in his brain were finding order in monochromes and a slow beat of reliable, unpressured repetition. He knew that he was irrelevant, but he also knew that he was trusted, predictable, that his world was trusted, predictable. Safely detached in his own reality, he could be anonymous, untouchable. Conversations didn't occur beyond what he understood. He had no need to share anything of Martin with colleagues for whom he was just a bit too weird. Obviously clever, but a bit too weird even so. Nor did he need to share the data he carried in his head, but which they could not possibly have ever understood. And yet, after a couple of years of steady routine and replay and isolation, unseen, Martin Cox was slowly moving, expanding the realm in his mind, growing and progressing from office boy to copying and tracing, losing his resistance to doing more, embracing more, without noticing it. He started using the computer and was trusted to fetch and file printouts. He still considered himself a clerk, and his colleagues still considered him weird. It didn't matter. Bill Edwards was watching Martin, observing the subtle process as Martin started to forget himself. The young man fascinated Bill Edwards. Martin's urgent obsessiveness and that beautiful lack of guile was moving slowly beyond innocence. Bill came to understand Martin's need to be in a space of answers and resolution, simplicity, no traps, no touch. When they first met, Bill had been slightly unnerved by the slender, gangling teenage frame and the hard, ice blue in the fixed gaze. Martin had said that all he wanted was to be in an office, to be a clerk. But the boy's astonishing mathematical and analytical skills, his genius for structural calculations, were evident in everything Martin did. The cups of tea were always filled to the exact same level, the boxes of tea bags and jars of coffee perfectly aligned, the stray coffee granules carefully placed in tidy rows, parallel with the edge of the counter, or in patterns around spots of water and stains. Sometimes they were aligned to the windows, sometimes to the angle of a chair dragged away from a table. But from the moment he handed Martin his first rotring pen, Bill had seen the superb hand-to-eye coordination, the richness of his gift for drawing. For Martin, his drawing skill was a given, part of the precision and control, an expression of what is otherwise loud and debilitating. Back then, he wanted only other people's ideas to render them absolute perfection in straight or curved black and white lines. With each passing year, Bill had watched Martin's innate ability develop to draw pen on paper and later on screen with a mouse, tablet and in software. He marvelled at Martin's speed, working out dimensions, scale and structural loads, never using a calculator or asking someone else to check his figures. He didn't need them checked because Martin Cox knew they were always absolutely accurate. And they were. At first, it was just simple stuff. Then Bill Edwards had asked Martin to help with writing the firm's name on a pile of sketches, produced and edited in collaboration with another company. He had handed Martin a 0.5mm rapidograph with a steel, cork-backed ruler and shown him a sample drawing already marked with the Bigwell, Edwards and Staines name and address. Martin was done within a couple of hours. After that first task, he was asked to add more complex details to collaborative work. Then he was asked to transfer comments from meeting notes to drawings. His lines of text were always perfectly proportioned, tightly kerned and aligned, like the coffee granules, their placements absolute and regimented. Draft proposal and manufacturing drawings, previously just rough sketches, he turned into works of precision that were almost art, but for their flawlessness. No cracks, no ambiguities, no disinformation to confuse or stimulate the imagination, only absolutes in black and white, only what could be seen but not known. Soon, he was interpreting mechanical and structural designs from architectural drafts for his boss, who told Martin to call him Bill. Martin's unique way of seeing expanded his world from tea and coffee to tea and coffee and drafting and design, and Martin barely noticed. Martin started working with AutoCAD design software and was equally adept at producing digital drawings from rough sketches and line work. He transformed the messiness of preliminary ideas to bring order and balance, described in perfect back lines and curves with his pen, and in perfect pixels with his tablet and mouse. Engineers and architects handed over rough drafts to Bigwell, Edwards and Staines, and Bigwell, Edwards and Staines handed back perfect renditions completed by hand or later as digitally produced CAD copies printed on digital plotters. Martin was fast too, preparing multiple versions of designs for engineers and architects to review, improving and expanding, totally accurate and serene in the black and white binary spaces he was creating. He baffled his parents with tales of houses, engines, and patents for secret inventions, and yet still refused suggestions of college or university. Instead, he took a short night school class to learn how to draw better. But Martin's understanding of how to render two-dimensional sources, his economical approach to problem solving, the directness of his style, were all already beyond what evening classes could offer. His learning was his own process, the learning of a new grammar, a mode of observational drawing, experienced and executed with perfect control, unambivalent and unpolluted in the purity of black and white lines. They hold whole worlds, and their mass was exposed and rendered in Martin's tidy rapidograph lines. For Martin, everything in his life could be reduced to binary structures, to untouchable black and white. Every experience or expectation could be defined as something pure in an algorithm or applied in software. Calm came when he could see the code, decipher it or compound it. He might understand that light shows where the shadows are, so he redraws the shadows in lines of black and white. For Bill Edwards, Martin's flaw was his obsession with finding what was wrong, imperfections in his idea of balance in a drawing or design. It would bring him to a halt, a refusal to continue working on any drawing he considered deficient. If the curve of a banister as sketched, with measurements that were too short to reach between the floors, or an exterior door was placed too high above the ground, Martin rejected the work. For Martin, each collection of lines had to be immutable, perfect, a series of matchless roots and curves gliding across the page or screen in unblemished grace and mathematical purity. For Bill Edwards, such delinquency could be tedious, but the upside was that he could trust Martin Cox to point out errors and even to propose alternatives, thereby enhancing the firm's reputation and billings. By stealth, Martin Cox's job was turning into what Martin had never intended, but he barely noticed. And that's the end of podcast number 12. That's the end of chapter 4 as well. I'll be back again soon with chapter 5, and I hope you're enjoying the Sitting Comfortably podcast and that you are enjoying the Draftsman. If you would like to get a copy of the book yourself, go and look it up on Unbound. I hope you do decide you want a copy. That's what all of this is about. Until next time, thank you for your attention and have a lovely day. Bye-bye.